For 3 days and nights, the baby's cries had ripped through the small ranch house like a living thing, relentless and raw. Johnny hadn't slept. He swayed in the middle of the kitchen, Eli clutched to his chest, the child's tiny face crimson, fists flailing against the sweat-damp fabric of his father's shirt. The sound that came from that small body was impossible, a keen that sliced through walls and bone and settled deep in the marrow of a man's despair. Johnny's eyes were raw, his hand shaking so badly he feared he'd drop the boy, so he held tighter. That only made Eli cry harder. Bottles lay scattered across the counter, sour milk curdling in the heat. The whole house smelled of defeat. He had tried everything. Feeding, changing, rocking, walking the floorboards until his boots groaned. The doctor had come, found nothing wrong, and left with useless sympathy. The ranch hands had offered folk remedies, warm baths, cool cloths, a drop of whiskey on the gums. Nothing touched the pain inside his son. Mary had been gone 3 months. 3 months since she'd bled out on their bed while the midwife's hands moved in frantic, futile rhythm. 3 months since her fingers had gone cold in his and she'd whispered, "Take care of our baby," before the light slipped from her eyes forever. They'd buried her on a Tuesday. The town had come in black, bearing casseroles he couldn't taste and words he couldn't believe. "You're strong. God has a plan. Time heals." All of it hollow. For the first 2 months Eli had been quiet, an easy baby, they said. Slept long, barely fussed, watched the world with Mary's dark eyes. Johnny had stumbled through his grief grateful for the silence. Then, 3 nights ago, the crying had begun. It had not stopped since. At dawn on the 4th day, Johnny stood at the window, the baby still wailing against his shoulder. His reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, stubble-thick, shirt stained with milk and tears. He looked like a man already half gone. That was when the knock came. Soft at first, nearly swallowed by Eli's screams. Then again, firmer. Johnny crossed the room and opened the door. Cool air rushed in, carrying the scent of dew and grass. Jessica Bennett stood on the porch in her nightgown and a faded shawl, feet bare on the planks, dark hair loose and wild from sleep. Her eyes were red-rimmed but steady. "I heard him," she said over the crying. 3 nights now. "I heard you both." She stepped forward. "Let me hold him." Pride flared in Johnny's chest, stubborn, useless pride. But Eli let out another shattering cry, and something inside Johnny broke clean in two. He placed his son in her arms. Jessica gathered the baby close, one hand cradling his head, the other flat against his back. She began to rock, slow, subtle, from the hips, and hummed a low, mournful tune older than words. The cries softened. Then stilled. Within minutes Eli's fists unclenched, his flushed face eased, and his eyes drifted shut. Real sleep, for the first time in days. Johnny's knees buckled. He slid down the wall until he sat on the floor, hands pressed to his face as silent tears came. Jessica lit the stove one-handed, set coffee to brew, then settled into the rocking chair by the cold hearth. She never stopped moving, never stopped humming. When she handed Johnny the cup, he took it like a drowning man takes rope. "Thank you," he rasped. She nodded, eyes on the sleeping child. "He's been grieving," she said quietly. "Babies feel it when their mother's gone. He's been crying for her." The words struck Johnny like a hoof to the chest. He hadn't known. Hadn't imagined a child so small could carry such loss. Jessica's voice stayed level. "They feel everything. They just can't tell us in words." They sat in the growing light until Eli stirred. She rose, careful, and placed the baby back in Johnny's arms. He stayed asleep. "I'll come tonight," she said at the door, "if you'll let me." Johnny swallowed. "Please." She nodded once and walked barefoot across the wet grass toward her own land, the rising sun gilding her silhouette. That evening she returned, properly dressed this time, hair tied back. She took Eli as dusk fell, rocked and hummed until he slept, then helped with chores one-handed, stirring supper, folding tiny clothes, moving through the house like someone who belonged. Over the following weeks a rhythm formed. She came at twilight, stayed until the baby slept deeply, sometimes longer. They spoke in low voices by lamplight, about Mary, about Thomas, about little Samuel who never drew breath. Shared grief, spoken plainly, became something lighter than either had carried alone. The ranch hands noticed. The town noticed. Whispers followed Jessica into the general store, cold glances tracked her across the churchyard. Words like unseemly and too soon drifted on the wind. One evening she arrived quieter than usual. Johnny asked what was wrong. People talk, she said. Let them. But it wasn't that simple, and they both knew it. Then came the night she didn't come. Eli sensed her absence before full dark. His fussing built into the old, terrible screams. Johnny tried everything she'd shown him, rocking, humming, the press of hand to back. Nothing worked. By midnight he was pacing, sweat-soaked and desperate. At dawn, with the baby finally exhausted into uneasy sleep, Johnny rode to Jessica's ranch. The wagon stood loaded in her yard. Furniture waited on the porch. She was leaving. He found her by the creek behind the house, feet in the water, staring at nothing. "You're going," he said. "Yes." Her voice was flat. "Housekeeper position in Denver." "I leave tomorrow." "Why?" She looked at him then, eyes bright with unshed tears. "You know why." "The talk. The judgment. I won't be the scandal that drags you and Eli down. Eli needs you." "I'm not his mother, Johnny." "No," he said. "But you could be." The words surprised them both. She shook her head. "Every night I hold him I pretend he's mine. Pretend this is my home. Then I walk back to empty rooms and remember it isn't. It's healing me and breaking me at once. I can't keep doing it." Johnny stepped closer. "Then don't pretend anymore." She turned away. He rode home in silence, Eli fussing against his chest. That night was torment. The next day worse. Sunday morning Johnny dressed the baby in the outfit Mary had sewn and put on his own funeral suit. He rode into town and walked into church for the first time since the burial. Whispers rose like smoke. He took a back pew. After the sermon, Mrs. Dean stood, voice syrupy with concern, and offered to find Johnny a suitable wife, proper, respectable girls who would make a decent home. Another voice added, "Good thing that widow finally left you alone." Johnny rose. He walked the aisle until he faced them all. "My son cried for 3 days straight," he said, voice steady. "I was losing my mind. I prayed for help. And God sent Jessica Bennett. Not one of you." He told them what she had done, night after night, asking nothing, giving everything. "And you repaid her with gossip. You drove away the only person who actually lived what this church preaches." Mrs. Dean bristled. "It's unseemly." "What's unseemly," Johnny cut in, "is running off a good woman because you care more about appearances than suffering." The pastor tried to quiet him, but Johnny wasn't finished. "I stood here defending her honor," he said. "But it's more than honor." He looked out over the stunned congregation. "I love her." The words rang clear in the sudden silence. "I love Jessica Bennett. And I've been too blind and too proud to see it until now." Old Tommy stood. "I've watched the boy come back to life since she started coming around. That ain't just gratitude." Young Mrs. Anderson added softly, "She sat with me when my mother died. Never told a soul. Just showed up." The pastor raised a hand for quiet. "Grief has no calendar," he said gently. "And neither does healing." He looked at Johnny. "Have you told her?" Johnny shook his head. "She's leaving today." "Then go," the pastor said. "The rest of us can wait." Johnny left the church to a mix of shocked faces and quiet nods. He rode hard for Jessica's ranch. The wagon was hitched, horse-ready. She was nowhere in sight. He found her again by the creek, skirt hiked, feet in the water. She looked up, resigned. "Johnny. I love you," he said. She rose. "You're grateful. You're lonely. You need someone for Eli. I know what I feel." He stepped close. "I watch you with him, yes. But mostly I watch you. The way you hum. The way you touch his nose to make him smile. The way you move through my kitchen like you were always meant to be there." He took her hands. "Because you were." Tears tracked down her cheeks. I can't be Mary's replacement. You're not. You're Jessica. The woman who came in the dark when no one else did. The woman I want beside me, raising Eli, building whatever years we have left. He dropped to one knee in the grass, still holding her hands. Marry me, Jessica. Not because we're lonely. Not because it's convenient. Because I love you. Because Eli already loves you. Because we can make a family, scarred and imperfect, but real. For a long moment she only looked at him, tears falling. Then she pulled him to his feet and into her arms. Yes, she whispered against his shoulder. Yes. Behind them, Eli stirred in the sling Johnny had fashioned and let out a small, contented sigh. The creek kept running, the sun climbed higher, and for the first time in months the prairie felt wide open instead of empty.